Hello and welcome to the Poor Hammer Podcast, episode 174. I'm not your host, Jenny. I am here with your host, Brad.
Hello, everybody.
And his co-host, Eric.
How's it going?
I was gonna do how's it going, but I was afraid it would upset people.
The pause that you had there, I was like, do it. Just do it.
Just do it.
I was debating it.
That's engagement right there, bro. Do it.
That's engagement. So today we are discussing some honest to God good T'au lore. Legitimately decent T'au lore. Everybody give a round of applause for Games Workshop. I am now a fan of T'au lore. I am a Kroot simp. It's a great day.
Yeah, we had the Elemental Council came out just a while ago. We read it and some solid T'au lore. Let's talk about it.
So without any further ado, let's jump into this thing.
Sounds good.
So before we start, we're not going to do spoilers right away, but we are going to do spoilers in this episode. I will give everyone a warning. And then from there on out, you're on your own if you stay.
Yeah, some just like real quick general thoughts. If you're like super worried about spoilers at all, book's pretty solid. If you're interested, give it a shot. It's a bit longer side, but doesn't really drag. And there is a Space Marine in it. So there you go. There's your sales pitch.
But to cover some of my thoughts on the book and what it did for T'au lore, for my knowledge of T'au lore, because I'm aware that it's probably not the first thing to cover each of these topics, but it did a good job as an introduction, which I think is what I would really sales pitch this book as, is a great first intro into T'au.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't read like any other T'au stuff other than like some wikis.
Yeah, that's my background too, is like I understand T'au lore, I know it, I have absorbed it over my years of playing 40k, but I've not sat down and read any other T'au book. I have always been told to stay away from the Farsight series because a lot of people do not like it. General negative thoughts on other pieces of T'au lore that people have. But this is the first one where we were told multiple times, like a lot, to read this book. So we gave it a shot and it is a wonderful introduction for T'au. I don't think it's like the top 40k book I've ever read. I think it's still up there to give number reviews since people love those. If Infinite and Divine is a 10 out of 10, like the best book that exists in 40k, then this is like a solid 7.58, somewhere in there.
Yeah, I feel like an 8's reasonable.
It's a very solid 40k book.
Honestly, it's just a solid book. Because like there's like you have that modifier of 40k book, which does some of its own lifting for what the expectations are.
Yeah, look, I don't read 40k books to read the best literature of my life.
Right.
I read 40k books to have a fun story.
But I do think that it's a solidly written book. It doesn't read like it's fanfic, which some 40k books absolutely do.
No, I actually want to give huge props to Noah Van Nguyen here because from what I just checked, this is his first 40k book. It's not his first book as a Black Library author, but tackling a not beloved Xeno as your first jump into the setting and doing this extremely good of a job quality-wise, it deserves major props.
It definitely does. And for multiple reasons, some of it is just like, that's a pretty big jump. And also like, there's a lot of name conventions, I don't know, lexicon, I guess, that T'au used that are like different. And I'm not sure if he got every single thing perfectly right, but he did a great job of weaving it throughout the story. So that's a hell of a task on its own.
Yeah, I do think, like I was saying when I read the Votann book, that it was a great first Votann book. Like it did a good job of showing Votann to you, not just like a story that included Votann, but like as an advertisement of them.
Like an actual like culture look at what's going on in the life of Votann.
Yeah, almost slice of life like, right?
Yeah.
This does the same thing with T'au extremely well. Like I really want to get into some of the aspects of this. One of the things I early in the book honed in on was the way he handles, I don't even know if you know this, Jenny. Do you know how long T'au lived for?
No. So I, despite having parts of a T'au army, do not actually know a whole lot about T'au lore.
Because of our play group, when she says she owns parts of a T'au army, she's comparing it to other scales of armies that we own as a group. She owns 4,000 something points of T'au. She owns a T'au army. It's just compared to
It's not
us.
the full range.
So I own a T'au army. It is not assembled entirely and it is not painted. But despite that, I I don't know a whole lot of T'au lore. So, like, in regards to the names, I don't know enough to call anybody out. So that all makes total sense. Sure. I'm just going to take your word for it.
Actually, that's an interesting one because so you obviously deal with 40K lore less than us.
Yes.
What was your intro level knowledge of T'au you had going in? Like, what did you know already T'au lore wise?
T'au are divided into castes. There's 5 of them. They're not human. They're blue. They have hooves instead of feet.
They're what you would generally call pan-human in sci-fi.
Yeah. I feel like T'au are shorter than humans.
Yep.
I can't confirm that. And I know that the T'au are, this is less T'au lore versus like general world lore. Would the T'au be communists?
No. There's the meme of T'au are communists, but like from an actual...
I don't think they are, because when you like look at the system, they're not, but like...
Yeah, from an actual structure standpoint, communists don't have caste systems or stuff like that. It's a...
They're also heavily colonialist, so...
Yeah, it's a more complicated, I don't know which exact political structure in real life most lines up with them, but it's some sort of...
I feel like it's some type of like Japanese, the medieval era Japanese style caste system with the warrior caste.
It has some Indian influence, some Chinese influence, some Japanese influence.
So anyway, what I knew is that they all, other than the one specific caste, everybody is basically equal. Nobody is better than anybody else except for the one specific set of people. They are better than you.
Yes. First among equals is the quote I have from the book that I very much liked to describe the Ethereals.
But so that was kind of my T'au knowledge.
So to give us like a look at how this handled world building T'au and like making the reader aware of things. One thing that's not really mentioned is T'au only have a natural lifespan of about like 40 years, which isn't brought up directly in this book. And I do wish it had been mentioned just as a like offhand thing about how much longer lived humans are naturally when they're not starving to death and beaten to death by the Imperium.
They could have just brought it up in a sense of there's a scene where a character is comparing his age to another character's age, and they never give like a specific number, just that like he is significantly older than the other. They could have put it in there somehow to be more like, I am older and, approaching the end of my 50 years or whatever,
Yeah, I mean, another problem there is like the whole stasis thing.
Yes, so that's what I want to get into.
Getting into like, okay, how old are you as like the amount of years you've been awake and like living, or like how old are you compared to when you were born, or like, all of that kind of stuff there makes ages a little bit weird.
Yes, so that gets into what the tech thing that I love from a world building standpoint. This is something that has existed in 40K lore and I'm aware of with T'au, which is like Shadow Sun, the famous T'au character who's a named character. When you only lived 40, how could Shadow Sun be relevant in the setting? Like she would exist for like 2 battles. The way T'au handle her specifically lore wise was she is kept frozen and is basically thawed out for important battles. They have characters like that in this book who are on, like their mission, and then after the mission they're going back in the deep freeze to get thawed out in 100 years to do another mission. Or the character in this book who has that talks about how like over his life of getting thawed out, he has watched his own empire's trends change, and like he mentions like the styles have changed again and like people wear their hair different now and stuff.
And then there's also the other wrinkle of the whole clone thing that comes up.
That's another way. I like the multiple ways they handle their short lifespans of like, they also have their cloning technology. If you're a short-lived species and you need to have long-term members, then you can look into cloning them.
And this is one of the interesting ones that got me, was their like ability to download the consciousness kind of thing into a data bank kind of repository of like, hey, let's make sure that those that are super knowledgeable are like kind of AI'd into a matrix kind of thing, so we can talk to them later.
So what you're talking about is engrams. So like for anyone who has played 40K, the Pure Tide engram chip is a relic that has existed for at least 3 editions now. I don't know how long ago it was first added, but Pure Tide is a person who was uploaded so that you can have a famous general plugged into your suit, dealing with your really short mortality in these different ways so that you can extend the usefulness of a person.
Yeah.
And they have they bring it up in the book of downloading a facsimile, like a very basic consciousness of like a sad AI version of being able to talk to a dead loved one at their grave.
Yeah.
And it's like super simplistic for like normal use case. It's not like with the engrams where it's like a full up download of someone's brain into a chip that you can plug in.
It's like a digital memorial. I don't know if that's the exact word that they called it, but it's not so much an AI for, oh, let's get the information. It's more of a, let's interact as an emotional kind of thing, a memorial. Which, yeah, just there are a lot of neat technological, I guess, answers to the whole short lifespan thing, but like none of them are really fixing the core problem.
No, and I like that there's ways you cope as a society with your problems.
Yeah.
There's famous issues in real life with like human teeth are considered like the worst biological feature of the human body. They're a miserable fucking nightmare. Everything about human teeth is bad.
Tell us about human teeth, Brad.
Yes, tell us about the movie Teeth.
No, I'm making fun of him because he's dealing with the issues of human teeth right now.
Oh, right.
True.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Quickly gloss over that.
yeah, human teeth are not meant to live as long as humans do.
Clearly don't.
So we have all sorts of things we have done. Like we've never solved it where we can make them last as long as we do, but we have solutions of drilling holes in our teeth and filling them with metals or alloys or stupid weird plastic stuff or whatever. We have come up with solutions to keep our teeth intact as long as we can and replace them when they can no longer be kept intact.
Hell yeah, dentures. Let's go.
Sure.
If it works, it works.
I love world building stuff like that, of like you get into the complexities of, hey, this society has this problem. How would a society evolve dealing with that?
They have also mentally, as a society, they don't treat it as a problem. Every time somebody's going to do something even remotely dangerous, it's always like, well, you will live on eternally, so go right ahead.
Yes, that gets into the T'au indoctrination and the glorious
greater
T'au
good.
Va. Yeah, the greater good. And really how their society deals with relationships.
Yeah, but like I think that is a good in-universe reason on why like the book isn't making note of like, oh, you're only going to live to 40. Well, that's just part of the culture. Like we've worked around it. People aren't walking up to each other and being like, wow, you're going to die pretty soon, right? Like you're kind of old, you're gonna die, right? You got like what, like 4 years left, 3 years maybe. So like that's just not a polite conversation. That's a nice in-universe reason on why it's not brought up, but all of the like repercussions of that lifespan are like talked about. Like you said, it's the T'au Va, the greater good, you'll live on, all that kind of stuff is just like part of coping, and it's for particular reasons, which is, it really is interesting how well the Elemental Council shows T'au as opposed to telling you facts about it.
So to get into like some early stuff in the book so that we have some structure here without going into full spoilers of later things in the book, the Elemental Council gets set up early in the book. It's made up of one of each of the 5 elements, which is you have K, who is a Earth Caste Fiola or whatever the first rank is. And then you've got Se, who is Air Caste. You've got Swordlight /6s, who is the Fire Caste, and you have Ores, who is the Water Caste. And then leading the council is the Ethereal, who brings them all together and creates the Elemental Council, Yor'i. So that is your 5 elements. And then Jules is the, what you would call like the T'au Auxiliary. In this case, he is a human, which is a Guevesa. So he makes up like the 6th member going into it, though they treat him as kind of like a extra tack on to the Elemental Council of like an honorary member type thing of like, also we have a non-T'au member here.
Yeah, he's not part of the Elemental Council. He's just a support.
It really feels more like, and also Yor'i's butler is here, so
Yeah.
I guess you can participate.
Yeah. It's got a lot of that, like butler, secretary kind of vibe.
Yeah, he feels more like Yor'i's assistant, and they're like, well, I guess you're here and you can hold stuff, so you might as well come along. You know, like, it doesn't feel like he's truly included. He just also happens to be there. They're not like kicking him out of the room for every meeting, but also it's like, all right, you're here.
So that's the Elemental Council, and their job is, of course, to rescue the plot device Ethereal, Kirkath the Seeker.
So I know you want to get starting points kind of thing. Do we want to bring up just like the lexicon a bit?
Yes. Eric and I, just to put this for everybody, Eric and I listened to the audiobook. Jenny read the ebook and listened to parts of the audiobook with me so that she could hear the audiobook part.
The audiobook itself, solid. No real problems. The intro was a little weird when their Space Marine stuff happened, but...
So last time we talked about a book, we slaughtered the narrator of the book. We were unkind.
Yeah.
I still back up what I've said. But Emma Gregory did the voice work for the narration and all the characters in this book. This book has a large cast. Outside of the main members of the team, the whole book probably has 10 recurring characters who are large parts who speak often. And she handled having a unique voice for everybody extremely well.
Yes.
I was able to keep track of who was talking just on the voice she used. That is very difficult with this large of a cast. And when you get to this first scene with the Kroot, the way she voiced the Kroot was so fucking good.
10 out of 10.
I love the voice she uses for Kroot.
Gave a lot of personality. But I bring this up for when I was listening, trying to follow all of the characters by name was it was kind of difficult, especially when they were brought up as your rank as opposed to your name.
Yeah.
Because I guess a T'au name is basically, it's a structure of caste, rank, home, and then your personal name.
Yeah, it's almost like a guaranteed military ranking, like you say Lieutenant Eric.
Yeah, which it's really cool how that whole system works, but given that I didn't really know about that before and I'm listening to audio and we're having names like Or and Oras and Say, and it's just what are you talking about? What's going on? And then they're referred to as Shasui. And it's who the fuck are we talking about right now? What's going on? That was definitely more difficult in an audio format as opposed to looking at a name on paper. Yeah, just Oras. How the fuck? What is that even when you're just talking? What does that even mean? I had to look up some of these names, what their actual written, this is how you spell it. Okay, I understand. It is now, that's the person.
I had kind of the opposite where I told Brad I was about maybe halfway through the book before I listened to any of the audio with Brad. And I told him, I'm going to have to listen to the audiobook before I can talk about this because I don't know how to actually pronounce any of these names. I have an idea, but I don't know if that's what is canonically right. So yeah, listening to the audiobook did kind of help with how to pronounce the words that I was seeing. Most of them are pronounced the way that I thought they were going to be, but when you read them, you're I think it's going to be this way, but until somebody else says it out loud.
Yeah, especially with all the apostrophes, whatever they're actually.
The glottal stops. So yeah, for those who were hoping we would do the drinking game today where Brad says T'au correctly every time, I would die.
He would die.
I was wondering how long you would keep up with that bit.
I'm not doing the bit all day. We're just saying T'au. No matter how much GW puts the glottal stop in there, and you should just say T'au every time to annoy them. So I come at it from, I have more experience of I know the general, at least the fire warrior ranks. So if you call someone a Shazui or Shazvray or whatever, I understand that because of game titles for characters. So in my head, I knew it was military rank person name. I could understand that. When they said Fiola K, my brain was title I don't give a shit about, K is name. Which when you look it up, the casts do have a real structure. These aren't made up. It's Shas is fire, Fio is earth, Por is water, Kor is air, Aun is ethereal, and then La, We, Vre, El, O, I think is the last. There's 5 ranks or whatever.
There's 5 ranks, and I don't know if the 5th one was ever brought up in this book. I only know of the 4.
Yeah, I think Shazo is the highest rank.
But I just remember that early in the book, I don't remember who it was, but they were this is your full name. It was Fiola, Town K, the first rank of 5 or something it was pretty early in the book that it was this is the first or second rank of 5. And I was all right, shit. This is, as they kept going and they kept introducing people as a Porvray and then not talking the name, it was fuck, I guess I actually need to think about what this means so that I can know what these characters are. it was tough for me from the audio aspect, but I think the book did a good job of like, there were some clear ones early on, and then it was brought up here and there, and then it was just like, this is part of, yeah, you talk about somebody based on their like, you know, caste and rank because you don't know their name and you're not like super familiar with them. So it works.
So the rank system is interesting, and the caste system, honestly, is really interesting from only understanding it like at a vague level before.
Of like fire our warriors.
Yeah. So like I knew there were T'au castes and you can't move around castes, and that's how caste systems work in real life. But I did not know until this book when they brought it up. They're talking about Say and how he has bird bones, like he's got like hollow bones, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. That like it's not just a like you were born to this caste, you're stuck with it because of social reasons.
There are like physiological.
Yeah, the Ethereals basically bred 4 warring empires into 4 specific like dog breeds.
There are physiological differences that define the caste for their particular skill sets.
Yes, but it's at an extreme level. Like, it's not minor in any way. This is like truly, they are physiologically different. So like an air caste has trouble in a planet's gravity well.
So yeah, your example of Say having like bird bones is Say being the air caste pilot. All right, yeah, kind of makes sense.
So it's interesting because like I knew the general lore. Jenny, did you know for the general lore for T'au, the caste system before going in, or any history as to how it came to be?
I wasn't 100% sure on how it came to be. I did know that the caste system meant like you had specific, like each caste handled a specific area. I don't think I could have told you specifically who did what, but I know like all of the ships are named fish names because they're like...
Well, the fish names is more confusing. I'm not going to get into that discussion.
That's not what I meant. Like it's, everything is like specific. I knew that like you had a role and that was where you fell in the elemental circle.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that you've finished the book, do you have what you think to be an understanding of how they came to be?
I have a better sense of it.
I mean, they made several references, but there was no like, here's the lore dump.
They gave enough that I could probably piece it together, but there is still a sense of like all of the castes were at war with each other because that is what people do. And then the Ethereals were like, stop it. I'm not entirely sure why everyone agreed that like the Ethereal saying stop it was, yeah, okay, we're going to stop. Like, I'm not sure why that was agreed upon, where that came from, but they said stop, everybody stopped, and now they all have specific jobs.
So I'm going to give an outside of context of this book rundown and the non-answers that are within it. Because again, it's like a history in 40K thing of like, until you get a Horus Heresy of it, this is what we've got.
Yeah, and it was like referenced in a few cases, but there was no like specific lore dump of here's the whole backstory. It's just like, yeah, there was wars and like, oh, they finally were happy and like went to the diplomacy council and stuff like that. So let's hear the backstory.
Okay, so from the Imperium's perspective, an Imperium ship finds the original T'au planet. They find T'au and it's like literally primitives, barely standing up straight apes, right? Like just starting out.
Just figuring out the basics of what a tool is.
Yes. And they're basically like some warring primitives on a planet. And they're like, all right, we've scouted this out. We'll come back with a fleet, kill off everything on this planet and turn it into our new factory world. So they leave, come back like 100 or 1,000 years later or whatever, because Imperium.
I feel like 1,000 makes more sense, but
you never know with timelines in 40K.
It's GW, add or remove a 0 and you're fine.
They come back and they can't get to the planet because there is a warp storm that has surrounded it and they can no longer get to the planet to take it over. And they're like, all right, I guess we'll come back when the warp storm's over. So like a couple thousand years later, they come back again to check on it if they can finally take it over now. And they are greeted by the modern day T'au Empire, the fully fledged
battle suits.
Yeah, like the real deal. That's their perspective of what occurred. From an internal standpoint of what happened during that period, the T'au was 4 warring civilizations that were what will become Earth, Air, Fire, fire, and water. They're all at war with each other and are all generalist societies and are like Black Powder era, like Four Kingdoms fighting. Through means unknown that may be Xenos tampering, may be warp shenanigans, blah, blah, blah. A billion theories go here. The Harlequins did it. The Ethereals show up and enter as basically a fifth tribe of religious figures / politicians. They get everybody to a peace table and get everybody to stop fighting and agree that they all need to become part of the greater good for the benefit of their species as a whole, and that their gift to the universe is to take it over and to make everything part of a perfect greater whole.
Yeah, I think in the book they reference the besieged city of T'au.
Yes.
I think it's the Earth Fortress on T'au.
Yes.
As far as I could understand the lexicon there. But yeah, just like, I guess the Ethereals just showed up and were like, yeah, we're Ethereals. Listen to us.
So they keep it vague. There is arguments among 40K different theories to cut off the most obvious one. The original thing was there is a writing that is from the perspective of an Imperium scientist / what would later be a Mechanicum person, because this is old lore, who was dissecting T'au and was trying to figure out how any society could work together in unity without regular beatings and executions of everybody who is under the superior person. And because the Ethereals don't just randomly execute everybody and beat everybody and flog everybody every day, there must be mind control involved. So they theorize that because the T'au have nussies, that the Ethereals control them through pheromones. That's the origination of that theory, just for people who think that's like a fact in 40K. That's just a bullshit Imperium funny thing.
A game theory.
Yeah.
Wow.
But there is argument for if the Ethereals have any way to actually modify the thoughts of T'au. They do always tend to keep it vague of if they're just great manipulators who understand indoctrination and brainwashing, or if they've got some power over the other subspecies. And it's I like that this book tends to keep it more towards the indoctrination side of things rather than it's mind control, because mind control is boring.
But there is definitely some illusion of maybe there's something beyond just mind control that's happening here.
Yes, at most it appears that it would be a type of...
It's an aura, as they say.
An ability to emotionally manipulate beyond just speech, if that makes sense. A extra level of ability to manipulate people in a discussion. It's kept vague on what it would be. There is the obvious one of Yor'i through the entire book has his tick where he constantly burns incense. Mm-hmm. But the other Ethereal doesn't do that, and other plot stuff that I can't get into until we get to spoilers. That's left there as maybe the incense does something.
But at the same time, there's several references to the re-education.
Yes. This is my favorite version of look, in real life, it is easy to mind control people through no superpowers, no pheromones, no chemtrails. If I go into a bar today and belt out the beginning of the national anthem, it will be completed by a lot of people, because indoctrination is a huge part of real life. All of you are part of it.
I feel like this is true of karaoke songs.
Yeah, sure. It works in all sorts of innocent ways, but I'm just pointing out one that a lot of people have experience with and go, oh, you might actually be right. And that's upsetting to me to realize about myself. And that's what I really like with T'au, of how real it feels compared to the Imperium's mustache twirling villain stupidity, where you're wondering how they could function as a society without everyone constantly being in uprising at all times, which I know is another part of the Imperium, is that is true. But
as we talk about a book with an Imperial uprising.
But I really like how much more real life they make T'au's problems and societal issues / quirks.
It feels a lot more like a fleshed out culture.
Yes.
That it's more of a based on the culture, you have results, as opposed to you have results that force the culture kind of thing. That Imperial mustache twirling kind of feels like sometimes.
It feels like something that was written with purpose as opposed to something that had to evolve out of of a satirical origination, like with the Imperium, where it's like everything about the Imperium's a mustache twirling villain because it's supposed to be the Reagan era and Thatcher era 80s, all of that.
It's purposefully satire.
Yes, where the Imperium started out that stupid because that was real life and that's what everyone was making fun of with it. And then you get to the T'au, where it's like it's trying to make a new society and a new faction within your setting. So like they thought about how to actually make something that would function.
There's still some aspect of the whole greater good thing that has aspects of we'll figure it out kind of thing. But I think this book, particularly the Elemental Council, does a great job of showing there's a lot going on here. It also shows the interaction between T'au and the rest of the T'au Empire. Not like fully, but there's a lot going on there with like the humans, the Guevasa, and then even the Kroot show up a little bit there.
The Vespids show up for 3 seconds.
Yeah.
You can wave hello to the Vespids as they're on one page of the book.
Rip Vespid.
I don't think they talk about the Votan at all, which they call the Demiurge or whatever.
I think the only real talk there, which was interesting, was the Kroot, and might bring that up once we get into the more spoiler territory.
Yes. While we're on the subject, though, there's the interesting how the language shows the society of, at one point, the Space Marine character speaks T'au to like screw with the T'au characters and threatens the life of the Ethereal. And the character whose viewpoint you have laughs at his terrible understanding of T'au because he tried to say an impossible sentence, because in T'au there is no way to get across the idea of killing an Ethereal. It's not something the language is capable of saying. So what he said is basically gibberish that you have to like item by item put together into, oh, he's trying to get across the point he's going to kill the Ethereal, but that's not something our language allows for.
Right. Which, I mean, that whole scene was kind of interesting, but it does show some of the linguistic quirks going on there. And like the idea of T'au fighting T'au anymore, like after the whole, what the hell do they call the original war? The like Mon-T'au or something like that?
Yeah, the Mon-T'au.
Yeah, just like T'au fighting T'au is like this like fucking foreign idea that just doesn't compute. And like to threaten an Ethereal is this like, why would you ever need a word for that? Nobody would ever do that. That would be ridiculous. Kind of interesting.
I thought it was really funny in the book that like several times they're trying to insult each other, and the worst possible thing you can call a T'au is Farsight.
They turned his name into a fucking slur.
Honestly, yeah, he comes up a couple times, doesn't he, in that aspect?
It makes sense to keep bringing him up, though, because he is like the only quote-unquote traitor in T'au history of like being a separatist movement.
Yeah.
The T'au like can't understand the idea of a traitor. Like it's outside of what they are capable of understanding as a society. The closest they have is a separatist movement of Farsight, who is considered like the ultimate devil.
Yeah, who basically just like doesn't trust the Ethereals. That's his like.
Yeah, it basically comes down to he believes the Ethereals are manipulating everybody else and that the T'au need to be able to be peers without the Ethereals, which is interesting from this book's perspective because you get the feeling that the Ethereals kind of trapped themselves in the role as the fifth caste of like they subbred everybody else into like different subspecies that are stuck with their one thing they're allowed to do so that none of them could work independently and take over the others and cause a war again. But like in doing so, they trap themselves as like the eternal politician / religious person of like they're stuck always filling this role now as like the fifth part of a cog in their own machine they developed.
Yeah.
There are several mentions of like, we can't do that without an Ethereal. And so there is a sense of like, you've made yourself the worst possible manager, where like everyone is very capable of doing their work up until everything goes sideways, and in which case you have to come down and fucking tell people what to do.
I liked the idea that I don't think I had seen in any lore before about T'au. Again, I haven't read any T'au books. I've only read other lore that includes T'au and stuff. The interesting idea between the cast of like how solidified the lines are of early in the book, Kay tells you, the reader, through her own thought process that she has the grenade and can save someone's life, but she cannot pull the pin on the grenade and throw it because that is an act only fire caste can do. She can't shoot a gun. She can't do anything like that. That is instant. You're going to the re-education camps.
Yeah, so Kay, the Earth Caste, like, engineer person is like, no, can't do that. That's a Fire Caste thing. Doesn't compute.
Yeah, it's interesting how, like, ingrained it is. But they also leave non-stupid exception cases. Like, say, the Air Caste is allowed to do the mechanical work on his ship, which would normally be Earth Caste, the engineer corps.
Yeah, and, like, leaves it to the Earth Caste when possible, but, like, hey, do your own basic maintenance.
I think there was a mention where Kay had to supervise him to do his work.
It may be for certain types.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I remember, though, that, like, he was like, I had to do my work, but Kay had to be there for me to do it.
Yes.
I did also enjoy, because it was something I had wondered. There's a scene later in the book where they basically flat out say, if you're not a fire caste and you are in combat, you're basically going to stand there and die.
Yes.
Like,
Oh,
if you are
yeah.
in that situation, like, well, okay, I'm going to die. If a fire caste warrior had, like, died in front of you, your instinct is not going to be like, I'll take his gun and fight. Like, you're just going to stand there.
You do your part for the greater good, which is not fighting.
Yeah, I did appreciate that, because I did wonder, like, in humans, your instinct is either going to be, you know, to fight or to flee, but, like, Tyra, like, all right, that's cool. I'll just die then.
Yeah, it is weird, but it does show off the kind of, like, strict nature for the castes and what their expectations are.
That does remind me of the other thing, like, between the, like, T'au and human differences of their social structures and, like, the way they have their own feelings on social interaction with other T'au. Of, like, they spend parts of this book talking about the fact that, like, humans value biological relationship, which T'au don't. Like, a human sees a mother and a father as something special, whereas T'au, all relationships are created. They're like friendships you develop. You choose your bonds. You don't, familial bonds mean nothing. You are basically only through friendship do you develop bond. You become a bond brother or a bond sister.
But there's also a reference of Kay having basically thinking of her like teacher as a what could be a father-like figure for humans. Never actually saying like, yeah, he's basically my father. It was always the closest thing that a human would understand would be a father bond.
Yes. And that's one of the things I really find interesting. We'll get into it when we get to a spoiler section, but there's a really interesting quote that I liked later in the book. But I do think we probably should get into spoilers and plot at this point, because there's a lot of fun stuff to talk about, but I don't want to have people who haven't read the book but want to read it get spoiled if they don't want to. So I will say this book has a very good plot line, extremely well-written characters that we're going to get into now, and all of that. If you want to read it and you're afraid of spoilers, go read it, come back and finish this episode, please. We could use the view duration and extra view count because lore episodes don't do great here. But otherwise, this is your chance. 1, 2, 3, it's time for spoilers.
All right, how are we going to do spoilers? Do we want to just like start at the beginning or just like randomly jump around?
Let's do a quick plot synopsis for those who have not read the book but don't care about spoilers.
All right.
So the book starts off. We get a couple chapters that are of everybody's perspective before the Elemental Council is formed. It is very jumbly. I knew to give it a minute, like, because I was told the book is good, and the beginning of like Assassinorum Kingmaker is very much the same, where like the first chapters is jumping viewpoints to completely unrelated viewpoints, and you're like, would you fucking stop and stick on somebody for a second? But it is setting up your cast.
I think this one does a great job because the start is a war zone on Thapes Quo, which is like a moon to the primary planet that we're going to get to. And so like, yeah, it is chaotic. That's the point, right? To a certain aspect of like, yeah, you're supposed to be like, holy shit, there's a war zone. Shit's going weird, bro.
I sort of disagree because of what Jenny pointed out in her reading of it.
There were a couple of chapters that really, to me, felt like, I don't want to write this anymore, so now we're going over here.
Yes.
And then it would like reference the ending of the scene you had just left, but in like a really like vague way. Like it was just very much like, I didn't want to write the end of that, so now we're over here. There were a couple of scenes that I was like, this is very jarring, and if this keeps up, I'm not going to be real happy. It did stop.
I remember the one that was like, holy shit, could we stop this, was the first time it switches to the command bridge with Noble Dawn.
Was the worst offender that I remember. remember. What is happening?
You're in a completely unrelated scene, and then it's like, now we're in the command, not even on this planet, and there's no introduction of the scene. It's just now Noble Dawn's talking, and we're in a different place.
And she mentions the scene you just left, but in a way that it's like, I just didn't want to write the end of that, so we're moving on.
Yeah, there's a cut or two in this early part of the book that were really rough.
I did not get that. I agree with the fact that if they had continued the amount of jumps throughout the rest of the book, it would have gotten just like convoluted and poorly done. But
I do think they continued the jumps, but it was done well, where after the Elemental Council is formed, the Elemental Council, you jump perspective like even mid-scene. Literally, for sentence 1, it's Or's perspective. For sentence 2, it's Six's perspective. But when it happens in those, it feels very natural as they are a shared unit. And it's interesting that you're basically sharing the 4 minds, because we don't really get Yor'i's mind for most of the book. You get like these 4 people are acting as one main character.
right.
As like sections of a main character. And so it just fluidly, when it decides to move perspective, will do so within them. And it feels very natural after the Elemental Council is formed. But before that, there were some really iffy jumps.
I can see where you guys are coming with that.
But the opening war part has the best fucking Firecast character of Relo, and he immediately dies because he is too fucking cool, and we need flawed characters. And we start with Kay's perspective, Kay being the Earthcast engineering girl. Kay is the one I tagged as final girl, because immediately when you're getting all the characters' perspectives, I'm like, in a horror movie, this is the one character who lives. This is the final girl trope.
Yeah.
And everything about how she's written is like, here's your sympathetic main character, the one that you're really going to root for to live, and other people will sacrifice themselves to keep alive. They like even go as far as to say, like, early on, it's like, or someone has a really stilted line of like, she's so young and has so much to live for still, unlike me, the old man who will sacrifice himself. There's a line or two early like that.
There's definitely an aspect of she has the most clear path to, I don't want to say advancement, but to like character development, I suppose, of like, it's a clear, obvious, you started here, you have a goal, we can get there kind of thing.
And I will say, as we get introduced to everyone is quite tropey, but not in a negative way. Tropes are useful in media. Having character tropes lets the reader get information without needing loads of exposition about every single character's background. You understand, because it's not your first piece of media, how the character will act more quickly. Tropes are useful. I don't mean that as a negative when I say a lot of characters start out tropey. I actually think, if anything, I want to give huge points to Noah here with every single character felt extremely well written with 1 or 2 exceptions. And this is a large cast to say that about.
One of the ones early on was Swordlight's introduction, so that being the Firecast warrior 6's, and her interaction with the PR representative, I think Porel was the title.
Yeah, it was a Watercast like news anchor.
Right. She's like this like fire warrior that's like trying to be like super badass, go fight, and the PR person is like, you're supposed to be like giving a broadcast over here to like pump morale. What are you doing?
Yes. Which I think is a fascinating thing of like, so to go through our characters. Kay, young engineering girl, her mentor figure who she loves as a father is like a disgraced Earthcast engineer because his style of engineering was considered to not be the future. And so they discarded like that style. And anyone who's part of that school is considered like, you're a dead end. No one's interested in this. Why didn't you learn under somebody else?
Yeah, I think it's now like referenced as like the Broken Hammer or something like that.
The Broken Hammer was his title.
Oh, okay. But yeah, he was like pretty high up though, because he was a FUL. So yeah, like a full like engineer, like 4th tier, whatever. But yeah, her like style of engineering, the Twice Forged Steel, is basically only her left. And she's trying to like re-energize it, essentially, and prove that it's worthy.
And it's not really said what it was, but if it's her suit, the T'au are stupid.
No, I think it didn't say like exactly, but there was enough references of trying to, in the engineering, I guess it's kind of in like the name of like the measure twice, cut once style kind of thing was kind of what I got from what was going on there. But yeah, all right, what are the differences between that and every other engineering school going on?
Yeah, that one's not really said, but like that's K. Then we've got Say. He is, in my opinion, the worst like written of all the characters of the main cast.
He's just the aircast pilot.
I likened it to he is a Star Trek engineer, the third or fourth side character of the episode.
Great intro though.
He has a great intro. He has zero character development for 90% of the book. And then he has 2 seconds of not even really character development, just like resolving what could have been resolved hours and hours and hours of beforehand. He is wasted potential compared to the rest of the group.
His intro is particularly interesting just because it shows the bond structure with his like wingman Pame, who he basically just loves. And also shout out to the Dea 2.
Yes, I really like the AI in this. It's interesting because it's like barely covered, but it's that like, damn, I want more of that. But yeah, so you get Say, and basically he's got his wingman who is his like subordinate, who he was like, I was never gonna take on a new subordinate under me, but she like begged me to do so, and then I fell in love with her, but in T'au speak because you don't talk like that. And then she gets cocky and dies in a fireball, and then he ends up as the grumpy old guy who's lost people, and that's his only character trait for the entire book.
Basically. I mean, it sounded like he was like actually old as opposed to just being grumpy old.
Yeah, he's older. I think Orr is definitely the oldest of the four from a like biological standpoint.
His one's just so difficult because of
The constant freezing.
yeah. So Orr being the water caste.
My absolute favorite character. He is written so well.
The unspoken legend of the 100
Yes.
Eyes. The spy that tells lies over and over again, even to himself if needed.
Yes, I really love Orr as a character, not because he's a perfect character, but because he is wonderful in his flaws. And then you have Swordlight / what Orr calls Sixes. Sixes being the sixth clone of Swordlight, the original person. So she's basically a Firecast hero who is basically a PR piece they keep cloning and bringing back so they can have an eternal hero like Shadow Sun. And they use her basically as PR for existing. And like it's not known outside of a very few people that she's basically a PR stunt.
Yeah, I mean, I think it shows up a bit later on that like those who actually interact with her,
They figure it out.
we know. But it isn't one of those like she was always a PR. Like her original incarnation
Was a hero.
was a hero that was like able to gather people together and help morale. And so, you know, the Tower Empire was like, let's have that more again.
Yeah. And then Yor'i being the ethereal who gets everybody together and forms the Elemental Council, basically is a punitive action against all four of the others for what happens in the opening chapters. It's like one of those like classic, oh, you're being punished. Here's your one way out. The way you don't go to jail. You become some sort of suicide squad.
Yeah, it's interesting because most of the Elemental Council are like the lowest tier. They're the La intro tier, essentially, with Swordlight being a like non-tiered, potentially La, I don't know, interesting thing. And then Orr being a Vray. But like everybody's like the intro level.
I really like Yor'i as a character. We'll talk about him more throughout the plot here. But this makes up our like core five. And then Jules shows up as our human who is working for Yor'i. He acts as our pseudo sixth early on. And since we're in spoilers, he doesn't make it very far. And then we adopt a Kroot as the actual sixth member as the auxiliary who gets fully adopted into the team with like the whole blessing of Yor'i and everything taking up as a vote of the council. And that's Ghodh, however he pronounces his name, who is the best character in this book. Dear God.
He's got some charm.
That makes up our Elemental Council, and then they get the mission of the Seeker / what I have called the plot device Ethereal, who is basically not a character, Kirkath. They have to find her and rescue her because she may be captured by a T'au supremacist unit.
Something like that. I do think it's hilarious that Kirkath is known as the Seeker, and the whole point of the story is to go find the Seeker.
But yeah, so they basically get that as their setup, and there is one living space marine left on this backwater world. He is a sergeant of the Raptors, Artemax, who is our main villain of the story for this small team. I have strong opinions on how he's handled.
So, like, the intro is on Thebes Quo, and shit's not right, basically. The war's not going well. And I think we get an intro scene, like, when the book's just starting of, was it 5 Space Marines?
Yeah, he's the sergeant of his group. It's 5 of them, and 4 of them die in the opening mission.
Yeah, so, like, there's a war that's going on, essentially, that has escalated pretty far. But the intro start on Thebes Quo. The mission goes very poorly for the T'au side. They basically lose. And yeah, all of our main elemental council fucked up in some way.
Most of them didn't fuck up. They get blamed for it. Whether they fucked up or not is like the entire point of it. It is basically Yor'i manipulating things so he can force them to become the elemental council.
Right. But either way, they were basically forced into it or sent to re-education.
Yeah, it's like they get told they're getting sent to like punishments. It's not really re-education so much as like, you're gonna go be a sewage repairman.
There was even reference of like the one person that was talking about giving the punishment being like, yeah, I know it's not really gonna do anything. Like, we're not trying to make you a better person. This is only so that other people won't make the same mistakes as you in the future.
Yeah, it's to show that we punish someone so that everyone can feel like we did something.
You're the example, which it makes sense, but it is also one of those, you're the example for the greater good. Well, fuck off.
I do appreciate that even then it is immediately brought up of like, wait, we don't do that. That's not something we do anymore because it was found to be like not a good use of people.
Inefficient.
Yeah, it was inefficient. And they're like, we agree. However, the Ethereals voted and said in this case it's going to happen. Also, here's the Ethereal. He has an alternative for you instead of this.
Yeah.
And it's like so blatant.
It works well though for...
It does. I appreciate how like corrupt it is immediately. Like, I've reinstated the death sentence. Here's your way out.
No, he specifically makes a mention because Kay is worried that she has to kill herself. And he's like, no, we're not doing that anymore. That's in the past. We're not doing that. However,
we're just going to make it torturous.
I will make sure that you're basically going to have the boringest fucking job ever.
But yeah, once the moon mission kind of basically fails and we've got Relo dead.
Rip Relo, he was a real one.
We move on to the primary planet, T'au Quo, and trying to find Gigachad and figure out what the hell's going on, basically. The whole idea of T'au not following orders properly, potentially.
The reason they have to go find the Seeker is because the Ethereals called an enclave and she didn't come. And they're like, yo, why? And then she just never answered. And they're like, okay, well, something is wrong because you just don't not show up to conclave. Like... So they're like, we have to go find her because clearly something has gone wrong.
Yeah, like there's like reasons.
There's a reason they have to go find her. Okay, she went here and then she never came back and we called for her to come back and she didn't answer. So
then they basically go on their mission to rescue her and things occur over the course of it, but we'll now spoil as we go and get to plot points. But the one thing I want to get to that is very early on and continues through the entire book until the closing moments is the masturbation of how amazing a single Space Marine is and could stop everything.
So I've got a kind of quote here from like the intro, and this is like from the Imperium perspective. He basically says, I am Brother Sergeant Armix of the Raptors chapter. The Titan booms. The warrior's genetic magnificence has warped his guttural voice to the verge of unrecognizability, so deep that it shakes my bones. This is from the Imperium perspective. Great, awesome. Let's show the Space Marine being badasses. Then through the rest of the book, we're in T'au perspectives, and they're constantly talking about how fucking cool and awesome and giant and just the bestest, awesomest, smartest, all-knowingest thing possible the Space Marine is.
And the thing that kills me, he's a random sergeant. I'm aware he's Raptors. We'll get into what the Raptors are and why it gives some excuse. But it's so stupid that it's like a single Space Marine. They make mention in the book, we put an AI array to try to figure out what to do next, but he out-thunk our AI array. And I'm like, oh, fuck off. I've read 100 Space Marine books. They're 14-year-olds. They're football players. They're fucking idiots.
Okay, but I need you to realize that 3 T'au in a trench coat would be the same height as a Space Marine.
I don't fault them for not wanting to fistfight the Space Marine. I actually like early on the T'au mentioned like we've changed our doctrines when dealing with the Imperium. We never enter melee because even their basic foot soldier with a chainsword is like well beyond what a T'au can handle in melee because we're 4 feet tall and 30 pounds.
Yeah, there's that too.
And that's great. The first time a character sees a Space Marine, it's a massive hulking mountain.
Yeah.
Okay, the next 300 pages of the book don't need to bring it up literally every time he shows up.
Okay, but every time Swordlight fights the Space Marine, she gets her ass kicked, which, I mean, admittedly is probably what would happen.
She keeps trying to fist fight him.
So I feel like every time you see him, you're going to go, ah, damn, I got to fight him again. You're going to be like, not exactly happy about the idea.
I don't know. The descriptions seem very thirsty happy.
Okay, yeah, there is that.
Okay, well, Ghodh is thirsty, so he's going to drink your blood.
But all the T'au are just always talking about how just amazing he looks, essentially.
Fucking, what's the commander's name?
Noble Dawn?
Commander not Shadow Sun.
Definitely not Candid Spear. Rip.
Commander
enough for our
Noble Dawn
homies.
is like full-on fellatioing the Space Marine for
Yeah.
like a solid 10 minutes in her first chapter. And I'm like, please don't make him actually be this fucking cool. And then later on, they're like, he outthunk an AI array. And I'm like, for fuck's sake, it was killing me for a while because I'm like, why don't you just take a single crisis suit and blow him in half?
I need you to know that I had read farther ahead than Brad was in the story when we had this conversation. And so Brad's like, why don't they just bring in a crisis suit and fight him? In the battle Brad is talking about in 3 pages, they bring in a crisis suit and fight him.
It was a
And
ghost
so I'm
kill,
sitting
not a
there
crisis
like,
suit.
please, Brad, tell me more about how you feel like they need to bring in a giant robot to fight the Space Marine.
The thing that kills me is at the beginning of that fight, they're talking about the base and how it has multiple hammerheads, tanks with motherfucking railguns. And they're like, all right, here's our base. Oh my God, the Space Marine is here. How will we defeat him? Stares at tanks with railguns, stares at Space Marine in broken power armor. I don't fucking know, Chief.
Yeah.
And then like a ghost keel finally does show up and fucking batters him.
Dunks on him hard.
And it's like, thank God. And they do mention at that scene, finally, that this is not a proper sphere expansion army. This is like literally a minor force sent to take over an Imperium backwater. They've got like 10 suits and half of them got destroyed in the first battle.
They did not anticipate this dragging out as long as it has.
The whole thing was this is an uprising that they fought the war, the day and night or something like that is what they called it. And like T'au basically won, and now they're just making sure that it's like being integrated correctly, but there's been an uprising.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, you don't bring a full conquering army to just peaceful resolutions potentially.
So my issues with him from that angle were mostly solved. The only thing that was left was he has the biggest, wrinkliest brain, which they point out how fucking wrinkly his brain is.
Oh, yeah, you brought up he's able to speak T'au or whatever, and they kept talking about like, oh, he learned T'au just immediately by being like just around us. And I was like, all right, fine, whatever, dude.
To be fair, that is okay, Space Marine lore. That is a thing they can do, but it's like, I cannot take it seriously when you think a Space Marine can outthink an AI array. I have read so many Space Marine books. Gilliman would have trouble with that.
Especially a T'au AI array that's like an actual AI array, not like our current.
Not out thinking chat GBT.
Yeah, Space Marine might be able to outthink a chatbot.
I'm kind of hoping a Space Marine could outthink chat GBT, but hey, who knows?
I give it 50-50 on that. But yeah. But yeah, Space Marine Artemax, he's the big bad guy.
Yeah. Okay, so he is a raptor, and for the Space Marine players out there typing up a thesis on why that means everything is okay. The raptors, for those who don't know, are consistently written as what if Space Marines acted like actual Marines and not 13-year-olds like the Black Templars? The raptors are not going to get caught holding a point, standing on a hill and getting bombed to death like the Black Templars would. They're not stupid ass running into battle with a sword and shield. They like do Navy SEAL shit where like they're like, we're going to take 5 guys and blow up a comms array.
They do mention they have a hard time finding Artemax because Artemax only shows up to battles that he is prepared to win.
Yes.
He doesn't just show up for everything.
Yes, the Raptors are written like adults, unlike most Space Marines, which is a point in his favor of at least they chose a good Space Marine chapter to choose. I will also stand by a point I've said before, which is if you delete the Raven Guard and just use the Raptors, who are a Raven Guard successor, in their place, more people would be a fan of the Raven Guard, who are now the Raptors, because they're just treated better.
Sure. So as they're like trying to find the missing ethereal, we get more story building elements of what the planet looks like and stuff, and we start seeing more and more on how the T'au technology is being integrated into this Imperium world.
Which was formerly a Xeno world before Imperium.
Yeah.
That they integrated their stuff into.
Honestly, it's a pretty fascinating world of, what is it, the Thousand Lilies or something like that they call the city, or...
Well, that's the slum area because it's like half underwater.
Yeah, there's the Thousand Lilies, there's Daquo Magnus, the city proper, which is where all the skyscrapers that are like true Imperium Gothic skyscrapers are.
Yeah, the capital city.
Yeah, where it's got like the T'au fortress flying over it, the command center.
It's interesting how, as we're trying to find the missing ethereal, we go here. Oh, maybe we've got a new lead to go over to here. And so like they're like bouncing around, and it's showing just like different aspects. Like at one point you get the fleet admiral that surrendered instead of fighting his like villa. It sounds like it's some like tranquil Japanese shogun's like villa kind of thing. And it's like, what the fuck is going on here?
In the middle of the slums.
Yeah, this is so weird.
Well, I mean, if you buy 4 or 5 houses around you and knock them all down, you can make yourself a big yard.
Yeah, but those are like just the interesting little background elements to the story, the environment building that really works out pretty well. Yeah, so on the slums though, honestly hilarious how they talk about the Red Society. There's one quote from their like leader, and it's the only extra legal enterprise to exist on Calquo in the wake of the day and the night.
Yes.
It's like, oh, okay, I guess, yeah, T'au currently do understand that there is a necessity for it, but the reaction of, you're a criminal, I'm gonna just blow your head off even though we came here to talk to you, is hilarious.
Okay, well, I mean, some of our characters need to calm down, but...
Yeah, it was just one of those, the juxtaposition of, oh, we're gonna go to the Red Society, which are clearly a seedy underbelly, like, criminal organization, because we need some information. Oh, you're a criminal? Let me just shoot you in the face now. What the hell?
Well, I'm here. Can I get your full name for re-education?
Right.
I enjoy how Orr handles several situations, but especially them of like, yeah, the propaganda says this, but in reality, we're still an intelligent society and our spies need people like this. We utilize this type of stuff still. We're not idiots who are like super dogmatic. We're practical.
Right.
Well, I mean, Swordlight's trying to be dogmatic.
But that's the reason
That's
you
her
have
job.
her there, is to exposition dump.
Yeah. But at the same time, it's one of those, like, you see the Orr is basically just like, calm down, this is my part. I'm the spy diplomat going here, so like, follow my lead. And Swordlight actually does. So it shows that the castes follow each other in their, like, if you're the expert in that field, then yeah, I'll listen to you kind of thing.
Okay, I have a point. This is one thing I noticed, right? There are several scenes, and I get why, when you get into the story, that Orr and Swordlight really butt heads with each other. In part, it's because Orr knows what Swordlight is, and he's met like her previous iterations, so he knows what he's getting into. But there are several times when Orr asks a question about a military strategy, and Swordlight just does not have any of it. Like, it reaches a point at one point where she's like, got him in a chokehold and is like, stop asking questions about military things because it's my sphere and not yours. And on one hand, I get it, but on the other hand, that line to me was really blurry, where it's like, I am military intelligence, but I'm not allowed to ask questions because apparently that's Firecast.
That's one of the things
And
that
it just gets
bothered me.
really weird, where it's like, he's asking a question about like the thing you're asking him to go do, and you're just like, no questions. And like, in part it's because she just is really tired of his shit, but also like,
I was like, it's mostly just because she's tired of him constantly calling her sixes.
I like her blowing up about sixes because it's like an insulting name to give her. What I don't like is there is moments where I get really confused about the cast lines, like Jen just said with that. But then later on, it's mentioned that Noble Dawn, all of her intelligence officers are Firecast. I'm like, how is that not water? They're your PR, your spy, like they should be your intelligence officers. why is that fire caste who would not be capable of this?
I don't know if I'm just like looking too hard at it, but Say can do maintenance on his ship, but he cannot do maintenance on anything else because that's Earthcast. But like, is the reverse true? Is Earthcast allowed to do maintenance on the ships?
I don't particularly hate, like, I'm with you, it is a little weird, but it also feels more real. There's a certain amount of it feels a bit more real.
I guess I'm just like looking too close at it because it's like the punishment for crossing a line is drastic. It's not like a scolding, it's like a whole big thing, but then the lines are kind of blurry, so it's like, good luck.
I do think one of my favorite things is like Kay uses her plasma cutters to cut down a crane and collapse it on a building. A-okay, even if people die from the action, that's not crossing lines with fire.
Nah, it's just engineering. Maybe a little bit of architecture.
But then she uses her plasma cutter to cut off the fingers of an enemy during a fight, and she's like, oh god, I'm going to re-education for that one. The line is so strange, but I did enjoy Kay's suit and like the whole, not just plot relevance, but like lore relevance of it, of like, you have a diminutive species that's like 4 feet tall and 80 pounds. And so you have an engineering corps who has invented, hey, let's take those stealth suits we have and just rip off the stealth suit part and just use the exoskeletal part and like use it so we can lift huge things and like basically make, in air quotes, power armor for our engineer corps so that you can do things easier. And I love all that. I can see maybe that being part of Twice Forged Steel being like, I don't know if I like giving Earthcast more physical strength when Firecast is the fighty cast, of like, I could see that being part of what bothered maybe the Ethereals and made that like, no, we're not going that route.
Yeah.
I don't know, because like in this book, then she gets lauded for it and they're like, damn, turns out that was a great idea.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's only, yeah, that was a great idea after it was proven to be like successful. But I do enjoy that, like, after it was like, yeah, that's a great idea. What are you gonna call it? She's like, the Relo.
I liked that.
Brad literally went, aw, as we listened to that.
It was so fucking cute.
I was like, that's great. I love stuff like that. There's several plot points in here. Like, I argue one of my problems with this book is pacing. I think this would have been a better 15-hour book than 17 and a half. You could tighten up a few things and this book would have been amazing. But there were so many plot points I really liked throughout the book. The little thing like her naming the suit the Relo, I'm like, that's fantastic, especially because Relo is a great character. You're very sad when he dies early on.
Relo is a great character because he basically becomes, for the specific mission, Kay's big brother. She's literally never been in the field before, and now she's trying the suit out in like an actual firefight, and Relo is like, you know what, we're gonna get through this.
He's a good sergeant slash manager type, like he's a lead.
She totally freaks out, and he is just like, you know what, that's cool, it happens, we all do that. Like, he's just big brother energy.
There definitely is a certain amount of big brother energy for the fact that she was literally having a panic attack and he was like, all right, we're gonna work through this, it's gonna be okay. But that is why Relo is so cool. Also, it just works because apparently his name means the undercut, and so like that kind of works well for what the suit is. There's a lot going on there.
So for more plot as we go forward in this book, basically they find out that there's a T'au supremacist unit called the Syra, and basically they want to exile slash kill off slash treat as second class citizens the Quivesa, the humans, and they're trying to figure out like who is leading this T'au separatist type movement. Like, this is unheard of. You would need an Ethereal in charge. Where's that Ethereal we're looking for anyway? And then they find her with the Syra, not tied up or anything, and she's like, okay, I guess I'll leave with you guys now. Oh, we're going back to the other Ethereal? Nope, gotta leave. And like, we got to that part of the plot and my brain is instantly like, okay, so she's the Sussy Baka traitor, got it.
Right, because like the very intro scene was the Space Marine being like, I need a traitor into their...
Yes.
Go steal somebody's identity and be the traitor.
And there's an unknown female character who finds the Space Marine very sexy.
Yeah.
And has the wrinkliest of brains, as she points out.
But so like this finding Kirka at the potential separatist movement, the Syra, is like, oh my god, that's the one I see. And it's like, but maybe not.
And like, she's like, don't trust Yor'i. And honestly, Yor'i at this point, I'm like, I really like Yor'i because he's an asshole.
Yeah.
But he's also like, right? Like, I really like him as an asshole boss who is like correct, where like you might not like what he tells you, like, I'm gonna sacrifice you on this mission, but like at the same time he seems to like not be evil in any way. Everything he's doing is honestly for the good of the mission and for your good when possible. He doesn't seem like wasteful in it or anything.
I mean, there's some aspects that are like, I don't know if that's the most efficient choice of your resources, but all right.
And through this part of the book, when we got here, I'm like, I really hope they don't make him the secret asshole.
He does
Right.
throw up a lot of flags. He does make a lot of commands where he's like, I want Artemax alive. And you're like, okay, first of all, what? Second of all, why?
Especially because previous to that 3 paragraphs, it was a Chasui or something like that was like, nah, if he shows up, we're probably gonna die. Like, we can't even kill him. And he's like, don't worry about, like, you can't kill him. You have to keep him alive. And they literally just said they can't even do it, even if they tried. So
This is like the second time they fought him, so you know that it's like he's asking for a lot.
yeah,
Like, it's not like it's the first time and you're like, well, no, it's the second time they fight him and you're like,
that's suspicious.
But we continue going. He kidnaps Kirkath. He guts Jules, who up till this point has been a kind of interesting character, and I'm a little disappointed that he dies right then.
His death is actually really cool, though, with like talking with the Space Marine Artemax about being pretty sure he was a Tempestus Scion, and then went and didn't fully embrace the whole T'au greater good thing, but just like wanted to follow Kirkath.
Yeah, he basically, instead of falling in love with the greater good, he falls in love with Kirkath herself.
Yeah.
Like, he fully intended to not fall for the T'au. He had no interest in the greater good. He just fell in love with her and was like, well, shit, I guess I work for the T'au now.
Yeah. It was just that humans interacting with T'au doesn't need to be antagonistic or truly like subservient.
I liked that. I felt very sad that Jules dies like that because I felt like that was a little wasted, partly because his character was more interesting than like Say at this point.
True.
But then we continue going on and we get to the point where they fight Artemax the second time. The Ghost Keel kicks his ass. He runs off with his tail between his leg, as you do when a Ghost Keel shoots at you. And then they meet the Kroot.
They meet the Kroot before the battle. Kay is aimlessly kind of wandering around the base, and a femur falls from the sky, and the Kroot are enjoying their dinner in some trees.
I did enjoy the fact that Kroot basically scared the shit out of her and then was like super friendly, and she's like, oh,
And he was like the boss, yeah.
I guess you are kind of nice.
He gives her the like polished bird skull that he was making. But yeah, so that's Ghodh. And Ghodh is the bestest character, the bestest boy. The reason I love Kroot now. This book is a Kroot propaganda book.
Kinda is.
He doesn't have that much because he shows up so late, but what it does show of Kroot is really cool.
I think it's the correct amount. I really want more of Ghodh's viewpoint in like future books. I really hope they do more with this series. I love his viewpoint, but I don't think a whole book of Kroot thought
No.
would work.
No, he has to be like with other
Yes.
characters.
But the one thing that was kind of shocking, but also like kind of interesting, was a call out to being in Votan space serving under the Hearthkin.
Yes, that is the one time they get mentioned. I forgot. I was like, I feel like the Votan got mentioned in this, but I couldn't remember.
Yeah, I don't know if this was during like what they were calling like the Ever Hunt or something like that, where they went for a long time going hunting stuff and then came back to the T'au and are all happy. But it was one of those like, oh, the Kroot are basically like, you know, like a mercenary kind of alliance with the T'au. They're good with working with others, and they've been around. Like, they were over in Votan space, now they're with T'au.
To give you more of this lore from outside of this book, the T'au generally believe the Votan to be a T'au auxiliary. They're called, I believe it's the Demiurge. I might have this word wrong, but they're basically, that's what the T'au think of them as, and they think of them the same way they think of Kroot, as like, they're part of the T'au Empire. And from the Votan perspective in the Votan book, they're like, dude, we love those average height blue weirdos. You literally just say greater good and they'll do any trade deal that you have on hand.
Yeah.
They're so gullible. I love them. And it's great, the two perspectives of like the T'au are like so easy to check a box and be like, they believe in the greater good. There are guys.
Yeah.
And then everyone else is like, the T'au are just here, man. They're so cute.
Yeah.
And like the Kroot are like, yeah, we're mercenaries for the T'au. And the T'au are like, the Kroot are our subordinates who are part of the greater good. They are part of the empire. And the Kroot are like, the T'au bring us to the battlefields we want to eat shit on and are useful.
Yeah, and there's several points where Ghodh's perspective is like, yeah, this is a little weird. Maybe I don't want to, like, I could just kill that enemy instead of not. But I guess maybe sort of we could be stronger together, at least for now. Yeah, that works. Okay, fine.
I really love the auxiliary perspective on the T'au of like Ghodh over the course of the book, realizing the strength of the T'au and how he's like, they have no biological strength because the Kroot only care about that usually. He's like, their strength is like an ethereal strength, not for a pun, but like their strength is in like their relationships and their ability to help each other. And he's like, that is why they are so strong as an ally for the Kroot and why the Kroot must work with the T'au. Him also being like, they're so strong of will, whereas Kroot are strong of body, T'au are strong of will. Some of them even give up meat.
Yeah.
As like this horrifying sacrifice. And the T'au the T'au perspective is like, I am a vegetarian. And to him he's like, it's some noble sacrifice to have given up meat for your life. Dear God.
And there's like very much like the I'm not T'au. I'm gonna go eat some meat. Yeah, Ghodh's pretty awesome. Honestly, works pretty well with the rest. Like, just like fits a solid spot of being like the fighter assassin.
The non-noble fighter, yes, you're rogue. You've got Swordlight, who's like honor bound and is the like noble leader type as far as fighting goes. And then Ghodh is like, I'm like a fish from the shadow.
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna eat. I did love the first time when Kay is like turning her translator on to hear the Kroot. I'm like, why? It's Kroot. They're just gonna say, we're gonna fight him and eat him. And they literally, the first words he said, first we fight, then we eat. And I'm like, ta-da! Very complex creatures.
But like there is, from the perspective that we get shown, there is more to it, which is quite nice to see.
I really love him throughout the book. And Jen had a nickname for him.
Oh, Ghodh is Arby's. He has the meat.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That man says meat a lot and naries a lot. The Warhammer stuck on a single word of the book, which happens in every Warhammer book. It is often preternatural, pronounced preternatural for some ungodly reason, British people. In Infinite Divine, it was Death Mask. In Twice Dead King, it's Nodes. Every Warhammer book has it, and in this book, it's naries. Naries is said an average of once every 10 pages in this book.
I feel like that's an overestimation.
It is not. I had a patron control F it in an ebook.
To be fair, a big part of Ghodh's plotline involves his incredible sense of smell, but Ghodh does not have a nose, so you kind of have to use the other word for it.
So, yeah, I mean, do you want to expand more? We're in the spoiler section and talk about why his nose matters and the stealer of genes.
Yes, they do mention Genestealers in this book and are very quick to say, no, Brad, don't worry. This will not end in Genestealers. And I was like, thank you, book. I was real worried. Thank you. They're like, this is not a Genestealer book. You'll be okay. But yeah, so they quickly say like, no, the Syra are not Genestealers. It's not a Genestealer uprising. This is something else. And honestly, while I wasn't critically thinking that much between reading sessions, I was like, I'm wondering how they'll handle this between the two Ethereals and one of them being, you know, obviously the traitor in air quotes, who is like a T'au supremacist, right? And I'm like, I wonder how this will go down and like how it's all gonna fit together. Cause like this could fuck up and be bad. And I'm like worried. And then we got to the scene where after paying off that he keeps on whenever he's near Kirkath, he was smelling a chemical smell that he couldn't make out.
Like a medicinal kind of...
Yeah, he was smelling something and then he's in the Space Marine base and he's smelling it again when he rescues her from the Space Marine and the Space Marine refuses to blow her brains out and keeps going, I'm gonna do it. And he's like, fucking do it, Space Marine.
If you do it, I'll shoot you and then take the meat. I don't fucking care. What's the problem here?
That's literally what he says.
But after all that, we get the big reveal. The female character who really wanted to fuck a Space Marine was not actually Kirkath. It was an assassin. And I was like, holy shit, I didn't even think about them bringing an assassin up because they do it so rarely in 40k books.
Really?
And I was like, man, plan.
You didn't?
No, I have read a lot of 40k books, and unless it's Assassinorum Kingmaker, assassins don't fucking show up.
That's fast. I have not read that many 40k books, but like from the intro paragraph, it was like, oh, that's some interesting wording. And then we got to like mid book 2 or start of book 3 or like the sections of the book.
Oh, that conversation? I loved it. I read it again afterwards.
Yeah.
Because my first read through, I wasn't on Assassin, so I still thought he was talking to Kirkath during the scene.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, do you ever feel like a traitor when you're with them? And she's like, no, I never feel like a traitor when I'm with them. I feel like a traitor when I'm with you. And then she mentions, and I'm like, okay, so she's like just got the hots for a space marine or whatever.
Yeah.
Then she mentions, I'm good with your plan because it's too dangerous to allow you to join the T'au Empire. You people are too dangerous to let be part of the T'au Empire. And in my head, it's Kirkath talking about humanity as a whole.
Right.
But on a reread, it's an assassin saying, I can't let space marines become part of the T'au Empire because that would be a horrible consequence.
Yeah. At that point, it was trying to figure out who it was. I had nailed down pretty well to Yor'i, but part of it was like him just kind of being an asshole with a few suspicious things. Like Jenny brought up the make sure to keep Artemax alive. And I was like, all right, maybe it's not just because that feels a little obvious.
When we got to the point where I started debating like who it was, me and Brad were both kind of like, if it's Yor'i, it's going to be a real letdown because it's just so...
It's very basic of the boss is the traitor.
It's like too telegraphed. He's a jackass. He's rude. He just doesn't care. And it's just too like on the nose. It's like, that's not really...
Yeah.
And I specifically crossed him off at the Genestealer scene because he talks about how stupid the Syra thought process is and like correctly tears it apart. And he's like, no, the idea of this movement is stupid. And I'm like, good. So you can't be the one in charge of it because you just explained why it's stupid. And I was like, okay, so Yor'i's not the secret asshole. We're good. And then we got to just before the assassin reveal when Orr is talking to Yor'i and Yor'i 180s and is like, maybe we should kill all humans. And I'm like, what the fuck? Why are you the secret asshole? And then we find out that Yor'i got assassinated and replaced by the assassin.
Yeah, at the Fleet Admiral's villa thing.
The fancy house.
But at the same time, like, there was a potential of like, oh, he's agreeing that the movement is dumb and is going to cause problems. But like, isn't that part of the plan to being an uprising rebellion kind of thing? Is to make shit just chaotic as possible? Doesn't matter if it's smart or not?
No, because in my head, I was still on the line that the T'au are of an ethereal can't betray the T'au, because I do believe that's biologically part of them. I don't think we've ever had any lore where an ethereal can truly betray the T'au Va. It's like built into them as a caste. They can have their interpretation of it, but if he believes it's against their interpretation, he would never follow that.
Right, like that's why they have like the council to be like, all right, everybody, you've got your own individual ideas on what's going on, but let's come to a consensus.
And I do love the idea of the ceremonial knives and the ethereal fights of like the T'au Va at the end of the book where he points out to Kay like the dangerous truth of the T'au Va. It is not a universal truth. The T'au Va is a flickering flame we must nurse as long as we can before it goes out. Mm-hmm. It takes every amount of work to keep every T'au together on a unified note. Like, it is not something that all T'au are unified. It is something we work towards every day and have arguments about how to do. Like, it's not the Ethereals don't have some master plan. They are trying their best to keep everything together.
Yeah, they're not some like hive mind that just is all knowing about what everybody else wants to do kind of thing. It's basically a diplomacy trying to figure out the best path.
Yeah, you basically have a ruling caste who is trying their best to keep all of these dominoes in a row and keep everything from falling over.
And I think Orr does a great job of showing that off when he's like reminiscing about all of his missions over the years between his freezes of like the Empire changing in ways and being like, oh right, this is like the Empire, the T'au Va, it's all generally the same and trying to be the greater good and to be beneficial, but like even it changes.
Yes, and he also points out like his jaded opinion of he's basically lost the light of the T'au Va. He doesn't feel like he believes in any specific greater good anymore because he's done too many, in his mind, unethical, evil things for the sake of it, where it can't be that greater good anymore. And he's like, I believe there is a greater good, but it's some ethereal, impossible thing that we strive towards. Like, and he can't say this out loud because that'll get you fucking murdered. But this is his internal thought to himself of like, he feels guilty over the fact that he's basically lost faith.
Right.
What he is saying is essentially what Yor'i confirms to Kay at the end of like, yeah, the greater good is something that isn't a perfect ideal. It's something that we're trying to create.
Yeah, it is interesting how those two play off each other. But yeah, man, the whole plan that Artemax had rests on the fact that T'au don't really, like, the greater good is bullshit.
Yes, his entire plan is, I will prove you're as shitty as humans.
Yeah.
And if you use your brains and don't act impulsively, my plan will fail. Which I'm like, okay, now we're at Space Marine level stupid again. We're good.
But at the same time, if you look at the Imperium, they would have failed this 100 times out of 100.
Yep.
Absolutely every single time they would have failed the don't be an asshole.
The second you replace an Ethereal with an Inquisitor,
Oh, yeah.
you fail every time. Because they're like, Exterminatus, baby! Boom.
Yeah. Well, and like, it shows that like the T'au even have like a potential impulse to do that. The new commander, I forget whatever they were called because they only like showed up at the end.
The Fleet Admiral of the Air Caste.
Yeah, is like, we've got no orders from the Ethereals, but I guess we're just gonna glass that city. And it's like, fucking what? Shit, huh?
I do like that, congratulations, T'au. You got an on-screen attempt at a war crime. You even have a name for it that is extremely close to Divine Wind with Cursed Wind. And I was like, all right then.
It was a bit shocking, but all right, yeah. Just fuck it, just nuke them.
Can we appreciate that Say's promotion is to be the leader of the Suicide Squad?
Yes.
I'm like, wow, I mean, I guess in your culture that is a cool thing, but what?
You've done a great job. Here, go lead the nuke strike. Also, you're not going to be outside of the blast when it goes off. Sorry.
To be fair, very few people were going to be outside of the blast when it goes off.
I appreciated that, and I appreciated that she's like, yeah, technically only an Ethereal could tell us to do this, but all the Ethereals are dead, and I'll just get executed for this later. I've been through enough of these wars that I'm just going to make the call and deal with the consequences. And I was like, damn, this character's been on screen 3 seconds, and I already think she's interesting.
No more fucks given. All right, what's your backstory?
Yeah, I'm like, damn, she's fucking awesome. And basically the end of the story is Sussy Yor'i, who is the Calidus assassin, is trying to get the T'au to oppress the humans. So the humans will have an uprising. The T'au will be forced to nuke everything, thus proving to the T'au that the T'au are no better than the Imperium and make the T'au lose their faith in the greater good. That is Artemax's master plan. And then it gets screwed up when, say, hears from Yor'i, who is not totally assassinated, only mostly dead, who manages to get a hold of him and be like, I'm still alive. Who the fuck told you to nuke this city?
Don't.
Oh, I've got to stop our nuclear kamikaze run. We'll just knock my friends out of the sky and then not do it. And he mostly succeeds, and then he dies because his character kind of sucks and you just write him off.
Yeah.
But at least he gets a cool last moment with Dea too.
Yeah, true. But I mean, like, it has the, like, final payoff for, say, as a character.
It does. It was pretty much going to be his end.
Yeah, you did a very important thing for the Elemental Council. Good job.
Yes. The guy who has nothing left to live for gets his out.
Yeah, basically.
But the sad death is Orr, who of course dies to the assassin in order to prove that there is an assassin in the first place. He like attempts to die peacefully to make it look suspicious so that they'll wonder if he was attacked by a human or by whoever, how would he have died so peacefully? And it's to make them realize that he died to someone he would never fight against.
Right. It's fascinating that Swordlight picks it out.
Yes. Like I told you early on, all right, writing 101, or hates sixes, or will die in some sacrifice for her, or she will die for him, pissing him off, and then he will die. I'm glad they went with the former than the latter, but I'm like, this is writing 101 for how you handle characters like this.
But this way of doing it, instead of like jumping in front of Artemax's bullet or something fucking stupid for a water cast, this works really well.
Yes, that's much better.
Yeah, so you see like not Yor'i trying to basically kill Kirkath and then kills Orr in a very peaceful way, and they blame it on Ghodh because he shows up and sort of like, nah, something's not right here.
Yeah, so from my understanding, the way this works timeline-wise is they captured real Kirkath,
Yeah.
replaced her with the assassin, made the Syra using the assassin to lead the Syra as Kirkath, so that an Ethereal would be leading it, which is what everyone realizes must have been the case to make the Syra exist, is an Ethereal had to have led them.
There had to have been some Ethereal saying something for you to decide to turn on T'au, essentially.
Yes. And then they rescue the real Kirkath while the assassin goes and kills and replaces Yor'i during said mission, or just before said mission.
I think it's after, but just like slightly.
I had to reread that part to get the timeline exactly right.
Artemax is in the tower. Artemax shoots Hille, and then Kay takes Hille into the courtyard. Swordlight and Say chase after Artemax with Ghodh, and then they end up in the basement where they capture Artemax and save Kirkath. But they go because Yor'i tells them, go, I'll take care of the crazy people in the manse here. But when they leave, the assassin kills Yor'i and takes his skin.
All right.
And is the Skinwalker, which is a great way to describe a Calidus assassin. It's so good, the Kroot background on them.
Oh, yeah.
Like him remembering basically the Kroot fairy tales that the Broodmothers or something, but like basically describing the different assassins in like Kroot language, and then describing like the other horrible things out there in the universe that you should never try fighting.
Yeah, these are the things you run from.
Yeah, which led to confusion on my part that I had to look up with some patrons. They mentioned Krorks, and I'm like, how fucking old are the Kroot? Because Krorks devolved like millions of years ago, and I thought Kroot were young like T'au. They are, but I didn't realize Kroot's backstory currently because it's very rough. Eric's favorite thing in the world, White Dwarf, a magazine.
Yeah, love that.
A magazine is where Kroot origination lore is written in one article in a random White Dwarf.
Nailed it.
And I actually don't hate the lore. I just love that this is how I have to tell Eric this lore came to be and is the only lore we have for them. Peck, the Kroot homeworld, in Orc Rock, which is like when they bundle up a bunch of ships and take it over and fucking put rockets on the back and just...
Oh, they're like moon fortress things.
Yes. But an Orc Rock fell on Peck. The Kroot, pre-Kroot, what they were, hunt and eat the orcs and become what is now Kroot. And because the Kroot copy all the data that they intake and like evolve based on it, that is why Kroot are like Kroot are, is that they are whatever they were plus orc. And I'm like, man, A, that makes sense for what Kroot are like.
Yeah.
But B, it does give you the out for why they would know Krorks exist, is because that's like their genetic memory stuff, which is a thing in 40K. That genetic memory is just a thing and you get used to it.
It's a little weird, but I could see...
You just get used to it in 40K.
No, yeah, that's fine. The genetic, whatever. But the like story of the Kroot is a little weird, but I could see that being expanded upon and working out.
So I was like, that's neat. Yeah, so Assassin, back to plotline, Assassin now as Yor'i attempts to get the master plan to fall together, gets found out in a 4-hour long shooting and slashing fest of everything going wrong at the T'au base. Artemax fake surrenders so that Arby's doesn't get the meats.
And is able to then get a new power suit.
Oh my god, I was so mad about this.
I knew that was going to happen.
The first time the power suit showed up, Brad was mad. And he's like, this is going to be some dumb reason for it to be here.
It was immediate Chekhov's gun. I was like, the fuck's that suit doing there? Why'd you call it out?
This is too stupid. First of all, I was really concerned, like really, really concerned that because they were like, somehow they know everything we're going to do. It's like they have eyes and ears inside of the T'au higher ups. Anyway, here's this Space Marine suit behind me. And I'm like, I swear to fucking God, if you didn't decommission this thing and it's just relaying everything you say, I'm going to scream. And thankfully it wasn't that stupid, but it was stupid enough that you didn't decommission the suit you turned into a trophy. It's functional. It has a live nuclear reactor in it, you fucking idiot.
Yeah. Its immediate call out was like, huh. And then as they're always jerking off Artemax, they're always talking about how his like armor's falling apart and it's like just barely hanging. I was like, if only there was a perfectly working suit somewhere. Wouldn't that be fucking weird, huh? I'm glad that it worked out that way, just cause, like, if you're gonna Chekhov's gun, do it.
But anyway, so he gets his fancy power armor and beats the shit out of everybody again. But my one problem with this part of the book, it's where I think the pacing falls off a cliff. After Or dies, we get the same scene 6 times in a row of, did you know Yor'i is the traitor? I know.
Yeah.
We can't believe this, but I believe he's the traitor. I think someone has replaced Yor'i.
Okay, they have been spending quite a lot of this book. This was like my one complaint early on. They spent quite a lot of this book discussing the fact that it's possible an Ethereal might be the traitor, but such a thing is impossible. And they literally run this argument in circles for like every other chapter. And I get that it's because it's such a like bizarre idea, but I kind of got tired of reading about it.
The thing that really gets me is, all right, we can continue circling around it for a bunch because we don't understand the concept of it. And then they talk about, oh, we have an entire protocol for if an Ethereal's been a Genestealer.
No. I called this shot.
And it's like, motherfucker, what? 6 chapters ago, you could have just been like, hey, maybe we just call that. See what happens.
So I called this. I'm so glad I typed this in a channel with the patrons. When I got to that part of the book, I was like making shot calls and I was like screaming because like I now know he's an assassin. And I'm like, how is the first thing when an Ethereal might be a traitor is not activate Genestealer protocols? Because T'au know about Genestealers and can reverse the process. T'au can check if you are a sussy baka. They can do DNA checks and be like, you've got Genestealer blood. We can fix this.
I did not know that they could fix it.
Yeah. Because the Genestealer is like a fucking retrovirus. This is a thing in general lore that I even know about with T'au. Like back in like fucking 2000 with the first Kane book, it's a known thing. It's so frustrating that you have processes for, an Ethereal can be turned into a Genestealer. Anyone can. There must be a way to detain an Ethereal and force them to do the medical checks. Right. And then they mention it after like literally an hour and a half of the same scene.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy shit, how did none of you think of this first thing? You're like, I have a genius idea. We'll enact the Genestealer protocol. I'm like, I'm not even a fucking T'au. I vaguely know one piece of lore about you, and I knew that.
Yeah, I did not. And like the entire time I was like, I wonder how they're actually gonna do this. Cause like I get the concern, cause like you tell somebody else, we're gonna lock up this Ethereal, and everybody's gonna be like, nah, you're clearly out of your mind. And then there's like, nah, Genestealer Pro. I was like, all right. I mean, I guess that's a good answer, but like could have done that a while ago, huh?
I do think you could write around it slightly different by making them check early before Yor'i gets replaced. And they go, no one's here's a Genestealer. That's a stupid thing. We've already crossed it off. We tested Yor'i. He's not a Genestealer.
Yeah.
Now you have more trouble when we get there to enact the protocol.
That would be a good, like, when they bring up, it's not the Genestealers, it's not the stealer of genes. It could be like, instead, it could be, let's check to make sure. All right, everybody's clear. That could work a lot better.
And you could even raise your suspicion of Yor'i at that point by have him be the one to be like, let's check everybody's blood, including mine. No one is above the law.
Have some of that, like, I'll use everybody, including myself. One of those fun little quotes.
I do generally love everything with the end of the book, other than the pacing of I think Yor'i's been replaced. I'm going to tell you a secret. You're not going to believe it. She just told me she thinks Yor'i's replaced, and I think I agree. All right, we have to go tell so-and-so. All right, you're not going to believe us.
I thought the revealing it to Say was kind of funny, because he's just like, nah, not my fucking problem. I don't know what, didn't hear it. No, I'm going away. Not my problem. Don't know how to fix it. Get off my plane. You are the grumpy old asshole that's just done with this shit. All right.
And that's why I was torn on that scene, because on the one hand, I'm like, I love that he's written this way because it's very funny for his character to say this response. But also, this character has had zero growth this whole fucking book, and he is exactly where he started the book, and I'm really fucking sick of him.
Yeah, I think that it works out because he does do like the sacrifice at the end of like, he had no growth. There was no growth at all. When Pame died, he died as far as I'm concerned. concerned growth-wise. And that's okay. It worked out because of his ending. But yeah, it was the weaker character.
At the beginning of the book, Brad did say at one point, he's like, do you feel like they made the air cast because they needed 4? And it was weird to leave the one element out.
It is true. It's like, okay, we've got fire. Fire is fighting. Fire is our normal military. Earth. Earth will be the engineer corps. Water. Okay, water will be anyone who has to speak, persuade, do PR, diplomacy, spying. All of that will fall under water. All right, what's left? Not much. We've got a pretty functional society at this point. Maybe we should do music or something. Nah, water could probably handle it. Okay. What's left? We've got like a quarter of our empire left we got to fill out. What do we give them? Spaceships? But not battle suits. That'll stay fire. Only spaceships.
It is kind of weird. But, now that you think about it, at no point in time do they mention, like, non-military T'au.
To my knowledge, because everyone is born to a caste.
But, like, they never mention, like, accounting T'au. Everyone is, like, a military, but, like, they never mention, like, random guy who does basic job that isn't really military.
They mention one, the T'au shop owner.
Which, like, what caste is that, man? You almost feel like they could have done air as, like, and everybody else.
Yeah, I don't know. That's one point. There you go. Noah Van Nguyen, for your next book, which I do think you should write, because this was stellar.
I don't think this is his fault. I think that this is Warhammer's fault.
No, I'm with it. But for your next book, throw that one in there. We could use that growth of lore.
And I guess partially because these stories are only written from military T'au. You're not going to write a story about T'au John the Farmer.
You say that, but we do get that in the Imperium. We have like the crime series.
That's different. That's the Imperium.
I know.
Everybody loves the Imperium, Brad. You can do whatever you want with the Imperium, Brad. You can't do that with the T'au because nobody really likes the T'au in the first place, Brad.
I agree, but I had the thought partway through this, like with Jules after he died, when I'm like, damn, what
the closest you get in this book
character.
is K.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm here.
But with Jules, I was thinking about it, I'm like, man, I kind of thought Jules was going to be a chaos cultist who converted to T'au. I talked about this with my brother at one point, and maybe Eric, that I was like, I kind of think there's an interesting plot line you could do with a chaos worshiper going to T'au. Because if you think about it, chaos is all about, hey, we're better than the alternative, which is the Imperium. Like, that's their sales pitch to most of humanity, is like, we will uplift the downtrodden, we will get you what you seek, we will get you the knowledge you seek, we will get you the sexy mamas you seek.
You could do this plot line. The problem is that everybody who reads it is just gonna want the chaos. They're like, why didn't you summon demons? Why didn't you bring me a Lord of Change? I want to see, like, bring me Nurgle. They're not gonna want the T'au.
I'm imagining you have a book that's like, what's a good example? Not John Wick, but like Sakamoto days. You have a retiree, basically, like someone who was
Yakuza husband. Is that what that's called?
Sure. You have retiree, the former chaos badass, who is now part of the T'au Empire and is like, I didn't go to chaos because I thought chaos was awesome. I had a goal, and the T'au make my life a lot better. So I'm gonna fucking help out these little blue people. And you have like almost like a Mandalorian type like guy helping out like the locals, and like they have a problem that only he can solve. They need someone who can be a violent asshole.
Your Mandalorian example only works if he is protecting random people.
Yeah, it needs to be
like... The
like...
problem is that every T'au we have met has been a part of the military-industrial complex. We don't have any random people T'au. So if you had random people T'au, but we don't have any lore to connect that, so it's just going to feel really weird.
We do know they exist, though. They get talked about in this book. We just never see one.
They're just like kind of awkwardly, like it's just...
Even the ones that we do see are not like, we don't even really see, they get like mentioned. We see more
I
like,
pushed through the
humans.
Crowd, and that crowd could have been made up of anything. Like it just doesn't, it could work. It's just like you don't have anything to link it to.
But that means it's a blank canvas.
True. I loved at the end of the book, the way Yor'i solves the situation is so well thought out and actual real world of like, how do we solve this uprising? We fucking leave and let them be self-sufficient and just let them get taken back over by the Imperium. The Imperium will attempt to nuke this world because that's what they fucking do. And when that happens, we offer to help again. And when that happens, they will will have chosen us. And it's like such a great way to politically take somebody over, make it their choice the second time through, of like, you know what? We didn't like it at first, but that is better than the alternative that we had.
Yeah, and it like calms everything immediately.
Yeah, the T'au are thinking long term about how to take over a galaxy, actual good political plays. Stuff like that makes me like want more T'au. Like I want to see like different interactions with them.
I think that there is a lot of potential for an Aura character. All of that sneaky political sabotage, mystery detective kind of stuff. Literally like the unspoken legend. That's a hell of a series that you could make.
Yeah, like just a bunch of Thousand Eye stuff, which is honestly just getting close to special circumstances and contact in the culture.
Yeah.
We could use more culture books.
Oh, wow. Brad brings up the culture again. You're not wrong, but...
I'm not wrong. Fucking amazing book series. Skip, consider Phoebus.
I think we've talked a lot of T'au. Any closing thoughts?
I have one last funny thing. I will say that of my 40K books, if I have to give this a weird mark, it is, I think there were some minor editing problems. This is not problems author-wise. This is an editor thing. And I don't even think they're problems. They're things I don't hate, but they're things that are problems as far as GW is concerned. One, when they were measuring stuff early in the book, they used normal units, like they mentioned miles and stuff. And if you've read a lot of 40K, you know that you don't measure things in normal human units. You measure them in gobbledygook. You measure in, oh, it's 14 heckas away. It's 16 Phoebuses tall.
I thought we were skipping Phoebus.
But yeah, you give it like something unique, especially for T'au, given the whole like the fact that they have the entire cast and rank and like everything has apostrophes in it.
Yeah, there was that, and then at one point Kay mentions a shark in the water when talking about the Space Marine, when talking about Artimax. It was something like a shark hunting us or something, right?
Okay.
She throws that line out there and I'm like, that's not how 40K is written. That's too normal. When you write 40K and you try to use a normal expression, you say the razorfin tuna fucker 9000 of planet gigamaxing.
Yeah.
You don't say shark. You say something fucking stupid.
I see what you're saying on this book, because like most of those call outs that were like 40K-ified felt really forced.
They always do. You just get used to it with 40K.
Which I think is why I didn't, like, you bring up, like, talking about a shark, and I was like, it sounds right. Like, I'm not arguing, but it doesn't remember. Whereas, like, I remember the call out to Catachan. Because it was like, fuck off, I don't give a shit.
But that's the type of shit where I'm like, it's weird, because, like, I don't hate this. This is normal. I prefer this over the 40K versions. But it's not 40K, where I'm like, I feel like the editor missed a couple things on the way through where they would 40K KFI this and be like, you have to go back and change this line here. Try to mention this world and this thing that some boomer will know from White Dwarf issue 146. It'll make him just so happy. Instead of saying shark like a normal person would like to read here. That's how we're going to handle this. I feel like this was less 40K'd than a normal 40K book, and I'm aware it's a Xenos book, so they probably spent 3 minutes checking it and then shipped it out. If it was an Imperium book, they would have had 14 people crisscrossing, double checking, making extra sure that nothing breaks the Imperium's image.
Meanwhile, it seems like they spent most of the time trying to make sure the T'au lexicon was done right, which I'm in full support of this editor decision. I don't think they were wrong.
I really like how it was done. Yeah, that's like the last thing I've got in this long... Oh, one last thing. Ghodh says the fucking greatest line when he is having his debate with Artimax, and Artimax is like, what does the T'au really mean if the T'au ally themselves with a cannibal? And he says cannibal is no insult. And I really like that because of how the Kroot see their perspective of cannibalism as like something from a reverent standpoint.
It's ceremonial.
Yeah, you eat your elderly when they die to pass on their genetic information. It is different from his perspective. And also it makes Artimax more of a fucking hypocrite when Artimax has a whole organ devoted to eating human brains and turning them into movies, which is real Space Marine lore that is brought up constantly.
That's good. Yeah, I didn't think of it that way, but good quote. Ghodh was kind of badass on that one. I'm glad that he ended up living.
Dude, when he quote unquote died, I was fucking livid. I was like, I swear to God, he better not have died there. And they're like, yep, he definitely died there. I'm like, he better not be dead. And then the last scene is, we've got a mission. We have to save one of our own. And then it cuts to Ghodh. I'm like, fuck yeah.
Ghod's last scene is him ripping the still beating heart out of the assassin and eating it in front of her while she dies. And he's going, you know, the T'au probably would have saved her, but fuck that.
Good thing I'm not T'au.
Ghodh is not T'au. He's just eating her still beating heart while she dies.
Yeah, overall, some good T'au lore, and honestly, just a good book.
I'm very sad that Ghodh did not get his meal.
Right, because they char everything after.
We need a sequel where Ghodh gets to eat a space marine.
Ghodh gets to eat a space marine.
I'd read it.
All right. Any last thoughts from you then, Eric?
No, just overall, fairly enjoyable book. Yeah, looking forward to seeing more books from Noah Van Nguyen, 40K. I might check out some ZOS stuff, but yeah, just more like this style of T'au lore that seems good.
And again, shout out to Emma Gregory. The narration of this is amazingly well done. The only weak point is the space marine, which is unfortunately very early in the book you first hear it. I appreciate that she couldn't do the big booming space marine voice, so she gave him like a gravelly rasp and like good enough. But everything is so well done, and you keep so many voices working throughout it. You can tell who's talking when, and the way Kroot voices are done is like, oh, it's so good.
Yeah, she did a great job. Honestly, she did such good, unique voices, helped me figure out like the names that were actually being talked about. Yeah, trying to figure out the whole caste rank system was a bit tricky, but never really lost who was talking.
All right. It has been a long discussion, very long on our end pre-editing, but hopefully everyone out there enjoyed the book if they read it or has been convinced to go read some actual really good T'au lore. But that does it for us this week. Make sure, if you're new here, to subscribe, because next week we have a very special episode for you. We're close enough I can now announce it. The plans are in place. Next week is going to be another game show. We are going to play yet another Warhammer game show, and this time I get to be a contestant.
Yeah, it should be pretty interesting. Looking forward to it.
All right, but on that note, we are out of here.
Sounds good.